expect all the Shearwater ladies to be up for that. Like a bird singing in the rain, let grateful memories survive in the time of sorrow. It's hard to forget someone who gave you so much to remember. Rosalind K. Blake passed away on Tuesday, the 1st of October, in the Manor Residential Care Facility, Kings Meadows, Launceston. She was 83 years. Her family would like to mention Rosa's care at the Manor. Ros herself knew it was time to go into care, and she accepted it well, embraced it, and made the most of it until her decline. However, the nurse in her remained forefront, and she questioned and checked everything that was to be done or given to her, making sure it was okay. And why shouldn't she? You can't take the nurse out of someone. Yes, she may have been headstrong. She knew what she wanted and made sure everyone else knew too. And as we will hear, there's much more to Ros. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it's hard to forget someone who gave you so much to remember. And nor do you wish to forget, for we gather here today in a celebration of her life. A vivacious lady who knew how to embrace her time on earth by participating in it well, by giving, caring, loving, travelling, and not sitting still. I extend a welcome to all her children and grandchildren, her sister, friends who are here with us today, and also those watching on live stream. Thank you for being present for her service. It's always important to know you share this service together, not only as a memorial, but as I mentioned, as a celebration of Ros, sometimes known as Kay. This is what she wanted, and by the entrance music, we're off to a good start. And I'd just like to let you know here that Ros was going to have My Old Man's a Dustman and Knees Up Mother Brown as part of her music, but then she thought that might be a bit too much. But Ros, nothing's too much today. When it comes to celebrations of life, everyone has their own stories of the person we are here for, some of which you all know, of course, today. Ros, however, there is never time to give the whole picture, just a snippet of the precious memories of those close to her. The absence of a loved one and a friend changes the landscape of our own lives. We must take their love into each new day and bring them forward with us. Ros entered the world in La Trobe Maternity Hospital on Friday, the 21st of February 1941. She was born to parents Harvey and Adelaide, better known as Bridget Hiller. Harvey ran a garage, as did Ros's grandfather, and Bridget worked at the exchange in Devonport. Ros's father was also involved, and grandfather also involved in the Lions Club and the council. The story of her preferred name of Kay for a little while is her grandfather once called her Rosie when she was young. She didn't like it when she responded with a swift kick and then became known as Kay before reverting back to Ros in boarding school. After 6 years as the only child, her sister Judy arrived to complete the family. Judy is here with us today. Her primary schooling was completed in Devonport, and although a very avid reader, it remained with her throughout her life. She also loved the outdoors and was always on the go. She had a few mishaps as childhood activities come along, falling off picket fences and onto rusty nails. For her high school years, she boarded at Collegiate Independent Girls' School in Hobart. Her sister Judy said boarding seemed to suit her. Perhaps that was her independent personality. Ros played hockey, softball, and was a very good swimmer. She was a swim champion in high school. She played piano and liked classical music. And as well as liking many genres of music, she loved and remained a fan of classical. Indeed, at her own request, she left us to travel onwards to Chopin. Ros would spend a lot of her young days with Aunt Ma, later caring for her. On leaving school, Ros entered into nursing at the Royal Hobart and lived in the nurses' home until her training was complete. And it was in Hobart she would meet her husband-to-be, David Thompson. David and his twin John had been out on the town, I should say. John hurt himself and David took him to the hospital. And guess who was on duty? Yes, Ros, who turned out quite like John, but David was the one to ask her out. Eventually they would marry in Devonport, Ros's hometown. And after a time, they would have daughter Stephanie, followed by Megan, and then son John, who latter two both born in Melbourne. From Melbourne, the family moved to Perth, West Australia, and it was in the West that David and Ros went their separate ways. After a good few years, Ros and the children returned home to live with her parents in Devonport. Having a young family, she went back to nursing at La Trobe Hospital and the Chest TB Clinic in Devonport. However, never resting on her laurels, in 1975, Ros undertook training as a social worker. She secured work down the West Coast in Queenstown, working as a child welfare officer, and the children went to school there. Serendipity took over one day when son John broke his arm and fell off a Tarzan swing up in the hills of Queenstown. Of course, off to the local hospital they went, where Dr. Blake was the doctor on duty. And not only did he deal with John's arm, he saw a rather fine-looking lady in his mum. And the rest, as they say, is history. Dr. Anthony Blake, known as Tony, and Ros eventually got married. Tony became known to Stephanie, Megan, and John as Toe. He did have children from a previous marriage, Nick and Vanessa, and on returning to live in the East Devonport, he set up his GP practice in the family home, now consisting of 5 children as well. Tony's eldest two, Sarah and Jeremy, were also living in the UK at the time. As the early 90s came along, Ros and Anthony separated, and she remained in East Devonport for a time and then a short stint in Tarleton, then to Shearwater. Finally, the late 90s, when her mother was becoming a little bit more in need of care, the both of them sold their respective houses and built and designed their home in Shearwater so that they could live separately but together until Bridget transitioned into a nursing home. Her own children, now adults, and of course grandchildren came along, 10 in all, 4.5 great-grandchildren. Ros adored all the grandchildren and was so very happy to hear about her new grandchild coming along before she passed. And when it was found a few years ago that her daughter Stephanie was having twins, she was at the craft fair in Deloraine. She was very excited by the news that day, just as she was excited about all her grandchildren. Back to Shearwater, where her love of the beach was firmly cemented into her being. Ros had dogs for most of her life, and her little dog Scruffy became well known in Shearwater, walking the beach. Everyone knew them. Ros would stop and chat with everyone and anyone on her walks. Scruffy is here today, and indeed was by Ros's side on her bed as she passed. Family would like to mention the dog walkers, especially Helen, where a large part of her life and proved a wonderful social network for her. Later, when she could no longer take longer walks, they would pick Scruffy up, and Ros would sometimes sit and wait for them to return, socialising with anyone who walked past. They would also like to acknowledge neighbours and friends who were a fabulous support to her. Ros was also very active in other areas. She played golf for many years and had many trophies to prove her worth in that area. She joined the University of the Third Age, and she played pentank. I believe that her sister Judy started that up with her, so Judy was mentioning today. She liked staying active, loved a movie or two, and attended many live music and theatre events. Being ever active, Ros kayaked Port Davey and out to the Braxey Islands. She would undertake many bushwalks. She liked to fish and camp. When the children were growing up, the family often spent summers at the shack, the beach shack at Opossum Bay, where there was power, but not much else, I'm told by Stephanie. She was very much an outdoor lady. The beach, of course, once again being her solace and her sole place. She loved her gardening. Now, those of you that know Ros know that she had veggies, many, many fruit trees, flowers, waratahs and camellias being her favourite. And I do believe that her fruit trees were very extensive. So you've probably all had a little taste or something from them. Travel. Well, now travel. It may be safe to say, where did she not go rather than where she went? From a young age and into adulthood, Ros wrote to a pen pal in Canada called Judy. She visited Judy in Canada and then a couple of years later took the 3 children for a white Christmas. They had a wonderful holiday, horse and carting in the snow, caroling. The majority of the travel was on Greyhound buses. It's no mean feat for 3 kids and herself, and this would also be the start and the passion of her travel. Ros had a friend from hockey days called Faye. They too travelled many places together. And it was also a family tradition to always have Boxing Day at Faye's place. Ros's daughter Megan lived overseas, including the UK, Norway, Malaysia, and Ros, of course, went to visit. Another of her travelling companions was her sister Judy and her daughter Stephanie. Later, she would travel many places with Stephanie, and of course, always headstrong, doing her own thing. One day, on visiting a certain site in France, Ros was adamant that when they came out, that they had to go this way. Stephanie tried to let her know that might not be the right way, Mum. Nope, says Ros, this is the way. As they started to go down a very large hill, Ros finally conceded that maybe we have come the wrong way. But there's no way I'm going back up that hill, she said. They kept going a little further, eventually a French couple coming to their rescue by walking them to the subway and helping them purchase tickets back to the central Paris. Christmas was always special for Ros, making it a family occasion. Indeed, just a few months before she passed, she was a little confused about Christmas, thinking it was near. Since it was close to July, Stephanie asked, "Would you like us to have a Christmas in July, Mum?" You can imagine Ros's reply to that one. One does not have Christmas in July. I hear her sister Judy also got in trouble when Ros asked if she had the Christmas ham. "Have you bought the Christmas ham?" "No," she replied, "I haven't yet." Ros was most put out that she had not bought the ham. We hold on to those times that we cherish in our lives, and I know Christmas will always be special for all of Ros's family. She'll be there with you this year. And Judy, just make sure you've got the ham. And Stephanie, make sure it's the 25th of December. I'd like to now call up Ros's son John and her daughter Megan for their tribute for Mum.
So this is something that Stephanie, John and I have prepared together, and I'm Megan, this is John, and Stephanie's over there in the middle, in the front row. So as Ros's children, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for the friendship, the love and the care that you've all provided for Mum over the years and also more recently. And thank you for attending the service both face-to-face and online. We'd also like to extend a special thank you to the dog walkers, the people from the nursing fraternity when Mum trained, and all of her long-term and more recent friends for coming. So thank you very much. Kay, Ros, Mum, Nana Kay grew up in a very different time. It was a time where women did not have the same freedoms and rights that we're afforded today. Society frowned on a divorced woman who had 3 children. It was a time where women could not buy houses without a man. Despite these societal constraints, Mum was able to borrow money, put a roof over our heads, and provide a happy and warm space for Stephanie, John and I to grow up in. We were known as latchkey kids. We got ourselves to school in the morning, and we let ourselves in after ambling home in the afternoon. We generally looked after ourselves until Mum came home, shooed the chickens out the door, a dog, stray cat, all out the door together, and then started cooking dinner.
Even though we had the freedom to roam and pretty much do what we wanted, there were many rules and values that Mum was very strict about us learning. So we thought that we would share with you lessons from Mum, inspired by Meg Bignell's book, The Angry Woman's Choir. So rule 1, there is only one way to do something, and that is the right way. Mum had definite ideas on how any job should be done. Pruning trees, mowing the grass, edging the lawn, hanging the washing, growing a garden were all processes that had to be done properly. Mum had green fingers. Her strict adherence to her rules resulted in massive harvests of delicious produce and a very clean and tidy household. No one could prune a tree properly, even under her direct instruction. She observed nature closely and delighted in the presence of a bird or a flower. Her apricot tree would be laden with fruit in summer. In her absence, I gathered the ladder, summons the courage, not to go up to the heights, but to avoid her wrath, should I be found, and I fetched a less obvious apricot. The next morning, when Mum walked the garden, immediately she noticed that one of her hundreds of apricots was missing, and she knew exactly which one it was. It was the same with her summer peas, cucumbers and lettuce, in fact all of her garden produce. She memorised her whole garden and knew exactly what was where whilst looking forward to her harvests. As a hockey coach and player, and many of her hockey friends are here today, so thank you again to another group through her life, Mum would take the weekly responsibility for preparing the match balls. The balls were leather and would be painted perfectly in match white and set on a glass in front of the oil heater. The combination of the terps and the oily heater is really strong in my memory, and also the visual of the perfect white balls sitting there.
The second rule is be courageous and travel the world. Mum chaperoned the three of us as young children and teenagers on an 8-week trip through Canada via Hawaii and San Francisco. She made the world a smaller place and ignited our curiosity to visit places less travelled, accept cultural differences and celebrate similarities with other cultures. This led me to embarking on a student exchange to Thailand, where I had my 16th birthday, and later living as an expat for 17 years outside Australia, where all of my children were born. So Mum came to visit us in England, Norway and Malaysia. John also lived internationally in Japan, and as you've heard, Stephanie travels regularly. Mum often remarked that one of her favourite memories was visiting us in Malaysia and playing golf as the sun rose, where she was able to watch the world awaken, hear all of the unusual tropical birds singing, and see the beautiful tropical colour flowers springing to life.
Number 3, set high standards of yourself and others. The aroma of her washing and ironing was a constant in our lives. Every Saturday our sheets were changed, stripped, washed and ironed. Clean sheets on a Saturday night were the norm. We often had toasted cheese and Vegemite sandwiches by the fire while watching TV, Mum standing and ironing, getting us ready for the week ahead. Mum's uniforms were starched and pressed to perfection. You can see in the photo there. Underwear, hankies, tea towels, and she meticulously starched to pillowcases and shirt collars. Everything was ordered and quickly put away, all neatly pressed. I still carry a clean and pressed handkerchief in my pocket to this day.
Number 4, sleep is important and never to be interrupted, especially mums. As young children, we were expected to have strict sleep routines: dinner, bath, TV, bed. We were put to bed at 7 p.m. and expected to sleep until 7 a.m. However, as a young child, I remember many a night tossing and turning until at least 11 p.m, calling out to my mum. I couldn't sleep. It was not fair I had to go to bed so early. Eventually, Mum would come and stand by my door, smoking a cigarette, making me feel safe as I could watch the glow come in and out of her mouth and smell that smell of cigarette as I fell asleep. When we were teenagers, Mum was a shift nurse and would often have back-to-back shifts with a 9 a.m. finish followed by a 6 a.m. start. On these nights, silence was to be maintained in the house at all costs. Quite difficult for teenagers, as you could well imagine. Mum also loved the routine of taking a bath. It was a great pleasure to her. You could see how it helped her relax, particularly when she was on night shift.
The next rule, number 5. Enjoy the outdoors and fresh air. Enjoy a swim in the ocean or at the river whenever you can. Mum was still swimming by herself at 82 years of age. Seawater heals everything. There is beauty in the world around us. It could be a flower, the landscape, a sunset, or the veggie patch. Give kids freedom to roam. It gets them out of your hair and it builds resilience and independence, and they learn how to problem solve, deal with risks, and learn by experience how to avoid risky situations, except which you've heard about when I broke my arm. Yeah, Megan and I found a rope hanging from a pine tree halfway up a very steep slope. We took turns jumping and swinging until my last turn. The rope jerked, resulting in the broken wrist and a quick trip to hospital where Mum met Dr. Blake, later to affectionately be known by our family as Toe. Megan and I often rode up Pengana Hill, the steep hill coming in and out of Queenstown, and no mean feat on bikes without gears and only brakes, 1970s dragster style. One day upon our return, our newly acquired stepbrother Nick refused to go first, and he followed us down the hill. We flew down the hill at breakneck speed and waited for Nick at the bottom. He didn't turn up. We rode back up the hill, down again, back up the hill, and all the way to the airport, which is a long way. It turned out that Nick had gone over the edge, but fortunately, a lady driving behind him witnessed his speed wobbles and helplessly watched him speed over the edge. She scooped him up and took him to the hospital. His teeth had punched through his front lip and he had fractured bones in his upper body. Thankfully, his father, Dr. Blake, or Toe to us, was on duty at the hospital and stitched him back together. Mum did a great job at those times in uniting us with our newly found siblings, Nicholas and Vanessa, who's here today, and their older siblings, Sarah and Jeremy, who live in the UK. When we were kids playing Rocco in the street, everyone else's mother would call their names. Mum would call us by using her piercing whistle, and we knew it was time to go in, or else. We were rarely late and quick to respond to that.
Number 6, respect your elders and their advice. As children, we were allowed to roam, but Mum gave us clear boundaries of where we could be and where we had to be when we had to be home by, usually by sunset or else. Our boundaries were vast and included the new highway through Devonport that was under construction, our southern boundary, and Steele Street to the north, our other boundary. Of interest to us when John was in kindergarten, me in grade 2 and Steph in about grade 4, were the tadpoles in a huge puddle near where the new highway site was being constructed. They regularly blew into the red rock, into the rock. Our instruction from Mum was, run like the clappers if you hear that siren going off. Little did Mum know that as she packed us off to church on a Sunday, or as she dropped us off at the cinema, we would hatch plans to catch the ferry to East Devonport and back. The river to the west was never stated as a boundary, so we were well within our rights. Our offerings for church and money for lollies at intermission were spent on our ferry journey to East Devonport and back. We used to time it perfectly, run to the ferry, over and back by the time intermission at the cinema was over, or church had finished. We would saunter in from church to be served a delicious Sunday roast, feeling very proud of our secret adventures.
It's probably the only thing we ever actually got away with. Yeah. Simple food prepared well is best. Straight from your garden is ideal. We were very well nourished as children. Fresh veggies balanced with a source of protein and carbohydrate was served to us daily. Mum was meticulous in her planning and preparation of food. The planning began at breakfast time, way before the hunger pangs began. Desserts were planned and prepared before the main meal. Mum was her harshest critic of her own food. We would wolf it down fairly quickly, but she would judge every item of every meal that she prepared, and never, in her opinion, did she achieve perfection. The meat is dry, the carrots are overdone, too much salt in the gravy were common complaints she made about her own cooking. A family tradition was a Sunday roast leg of lamb with all the trimmings, including homemade mint sauce and some sort of dessert, of course planned before the main meal. Lemon meringue pie, apple sponge or blackcurrant and apple crumble, of course with ice cream and cream. We all experienced an anxiety-laden time if she ever asked us to pick something up for her from the supermarket. The potatoes had to be not too big and not too small. They just had to be like that size. And, of course, Dutch cream later on. There was not to be any green evident on any potato in her kitchen. Mangoes had to have shades of red, yellow and green, all on the one mango. And rock melons had to smell sweet when you sniffed their bottoms. Cups of tea were shared regularly. One at breakfast with cereal and toast, a Nescafe at mid-morning to get the bowels going, and another cuppa after lunch, and then one more for afternoon tea, and finally one after dinner. Our youngest step-sibling, Vanessa, used to love drinking her milky white tea with one sugar in the morning. She would stand by the oil heater, her thumb in her mouth between gulps, surveying the scenery as it unfolded. The tea was a habit inherited from Mum.
Table manners matter. We were trained to behave at the table. A threat of a slap on the wrist would be sufficient reminder of how to hold a knife properly, sit up straight or stop talking with our mouth full. We're expected not to speak unless spoken to, especially when Bridget and Papa were around. Funnily, we've inherited her same intolerance for poor table manners, and I'm grateful for her expectations in this regard. Mealtime was important and to be honoured without exception.
Know what you want when you go shopping. There is no time for browsing as you buy stuff you won't need. Mum had a regular healthy diet and made her shopping as efficient as she could. The ice cream was always purchased last, and this was another example of her common sense approach to regular tasks and pragmatism.
Dogs have prominence in life and should be fed with home-cooked meat and veg, walked daily, groomed regularly, taken to the vet, and it's okay for them to enjoy the occasional ice cream in a cone. They're allowed inside and should have free range on beds and furniture and laps. Dogs are positioned in a similar way as children, and in later life, when we moved out, they were treated better than royalty, and often us kids. Mum loved her dogs, and her dogs returned the love.
Everyone is important. Everyone has a place and a value in life. Mum was a registered nurse and a social worker. She was a natural carer and saw this as her role in her professional and personal life. Mum had great empathy for the disadvantaged and unwell. It was not unusual for us to have people in need knocking on our door requesting assistance from Mum, and she would oblige. Mum cared for her mother Bridget in her later years, and she extended this same care to Bridget's sisters as they neared their end of life. When we were unwell as children, the care we received from Mum was second to none. We had to be genuinely unwell to trigger the next level professional care though. With her training, there was no chance we could feign a temperature, an injury or a sore throat.
But boy, did we try. Education. Education is to be valued. We're encouraged to learn and improve our skills from a very young age. She was a good role model in this regard, our mum. She was a registered nurse, a social worker, and had a postgraduate degree in gerontology. She was a smart lady and really loved to complete crosswords. Even in the last few weeks of life, although not able to write, she would still come up with the words to complete her favourite crossword in The Advocate.
Sadly, Mum experienced a decline in her health that ultimately led to her passing. This was not the exit that Mum had wished for. She had endured numerous visits and long stays in hospital. Steph, Megan and I offered support for Mum in different ways. Our support wasn't always accepted, and Megan and I acknowledged the wonderful care for Mum that Steph provided. Steph, we know that Mum really appreciated that too. Mum was tired. She felt ready to pass. She asked me to research the process for voluntary assisted dying. After dutifully doing so, I reported to her, "I have the VAD information for you, Mum." She interrupted me and replied, "I'm going to plant a garden. The cucumbers will flow down the water tank in full sun. The Christmas peas will be in the corner with the new potatoes beside them. The lime tree will be in the front corner and the mandarin tree in the other. The flower bed will be along the path." We take great comfort thinking that Mum passed with a vision of her garden flourishing, ready for Christmas Day, that she would spend with her family. On behalf of Megan, Stephanie and I thank you all for your presence today in celebrating the life of our mother, Ros. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan and John. I'd now like to ask grandson David to come up with his tribute for Nan.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here today. I'm Dave, one of her 10 grandchildren. We'd like to take this opportunity to remember her while we embrace the joy, laughter and love that she brought into our lives when we were all growing up. Nanny Kay was not just our grandmother, she was a great companion within our lives who taught us many things growing up. She had a stern personality that could cut through any nonsense and had a way of getting straight to the point. We can't help but smile when we think about some of the phone calls she shared. She would often skip the pleasantries of small talk and dive straight in with something along the lines of, "How are the bowel movements today?" Only Nanny Kay could turn something so personal into a family conversation. It was also her way of showing that she cared deeply for us and ensuring we looked after ourselves. Living at the beach was a dream for Nanny Kay and it became a cherished escape for us. She had a unique way of welcoming us back when we hadn't seen her for a while. Always a big beaming smile at the front door and a big hug for everyone as we filed in. However, there'd always be someone that was lovingly reminded that they were carrying a few extra kilos around the waist or a few less hairs on their head since the last visit. Summers spent visiting her were filled with long days at the beach, playing, swimming and having a great time. Nanny Kay had a love for the ocean that she has shared with us all. Those days at the beach, splashing in the surf, collecting seashells and finished off with a fish and chip picnic have created lifelong memories that we will always treasure. When we weren't at the beach, we would often be out in the garden with her, admiring the vibrant fruit trees and flourishing veggie patches. She would guide us through, beaming with pride and filling us in on all the details about why the apples were a bit more sour this year or the carrots hadn't taken like last year. The gardens were also host of some great Easter egg hunts and a lot of games over the years. Her love for animals is another fond memory we have of Nanny Kay. Growing up, Puffin was our childhood companion, always underfoot, wanting to be involved in all the action. In more recent years, Scruffy became her steadfast partner. The bond they shared was very special. Nanny Kay looked after him as devotedly as he looked after her. So much so that Scruffy would sometimes wait outside the open door after relieving himself. Nanny Kay knew this meant that he hadn't been able to adequately clean himself up and would race over with a wet wipe and clean up the rest. Nanny Kay had a flair for cooking that filled her home with a beautiful aroma. Her roasts were always incredible and her desserts were nothing short of magical. We can still taste her roast lamb with mint jelly and Nanny Kay's special baby carrots from the garden. This would be followed by divine pavlova, apple crumble or some other form of tasty dessert. The beauty of these meals was that they were always over-catered, so we would spend the next week eating it again as Bubble and Squeak. Once the food had settled, we would go digging through the ottoman, which was a treasure chest of games like pick up sticks, snakes and ladders and Yahtzee. Amongst the fond memories, the thing that really stands out is the great love she had for us, the rest of her family and those around her. She was a very proud grandmother and great-grandmother. She was the one that brought us together, always eager to have us around her. Whether it was a Sunday roast or a casual summer afternoon, she cherished those moments when her family gathered. Her heart was big enough to embrace us all, and she took joy in being our grandmother, ensuring that we felt loved and cared for. As we remember Nanny Kay today, we would like to carry forward her spirit of love, strength and joy. We will honour her legacy by continuing to gather as a family, sharing meals and playing games together. In her own way, she taught us that life is about connection, love, and sometimes a straight-up question about bowel movements. Thank you, Nanny Kay, for your unwavering love and for being the heart of our family. You may no longer be with us, but your spirit will live on in every garden we plant, every roast we share, and every moment we cherish together. We love you and will miss you dearly. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Rosa's sister Judy up with daughter Stephanie to read a poem I do believe Ros knew about.
Along with being tasked with getting the Christmas ham, which I still haven't bought, it took me a lot of convincing that it wasn't quite the right time to buy it. Can I start? Yes. One of the other things I was tasked with was to find an appropriate verse or reading. Wasn't much fun doing that actually, but I came up with 2 or 3, and the last time I saw her I read them to her and said, which one would you like? And she said, oh well, I actually like all of them, but you might want to keep one for yourself, for yours. I said, well, I'm not quite into planning that just yet. So this is the verse we settled on.
One at rest. Think of me as one at rest. For me you should not weep. I have no pain, no troubled thoughts, for I am just asleep. Sorry.
That's all right. The living thinking me that was is now forever still, and life goes on without me now, as time forever will. If your heart is heavy now because I've gone away, dwell not long upon it, friend, for none of us can stay. Those of you who liked me, I sincerely thank you all. And those of you who loved me, I thank you most of all. And in my fleeting lifespan, as time went rushing by, I found some time to hesitate, to laugh, to love, to cry. Matters it now if time began, if time will ever cease? I was here, I used it all, and now I am at peace. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. I would just like to remind everyone, for those of you who may not have seen it, there is a donation box for the home outside, just on the table outside there. And thank you to the people who have already donated in that. Also, as we take Ros forward, she will be going out this door into the funeral car, and the funeral car will move off. And afterwards, feel free to join us in here for refreshments and chats and your memories of her. If you're able, could you please stand? Rosalind K. Blake, you were seen as a wise, clever, energetic, happy lady who knew her own mind. All of us here now speak our farewells to you. You opened many doors in your life to many things, and you stepped through them boldly and took on whatever there was waiting to be embraced. At your age, you saw sorrow and pain. However, you gave laughter and love to many, and you too laughed. Your legacy is, of course, your children, who will miss you dearly, your grandchildren, who will hear stories of your life many times. The friends and colleagues that shared your life will often speak of you. Rosa's family, thank you all for coming out today, and thank you to those who joined us on live stream. The beach you loved shines in the sunlight today. The tide recedes but leaves behind bright seashells on the sand. The sun goes down, but gentle warmth still lingers on the land. The music stops, and yet it echoes on sweet refrains. For every joy that passes, something beautiful remains. For she will send you messages, hoping you'll understand. When your time comes to cross over, she'll be there to take your hand. This is a trial, a trail I'm going to leave for Roz's past life and her beautiful, colourful memories.
Whenever life gets you down,
And now,
Mrs. Brown,
a forward trail to take her onwards, on to wherever Ros believed that she was going, waiting for you all and also to meet those gone before. Live in your memories, travel on peacefully, Ros. Thank you.
whenever life gets you down, Mrs. Brown, and things seem hard or tough, and people are stupid, obnoxious or daft, and you feel that you've had quite enough, just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour, that's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned, a sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour of the galaxy we call the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And our galaxy is only one of millions of billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz, as fast as it can go at the speed of light, 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth, and pray that there's intelligent life somewhere up in space, 'cause there's bugger all down here on Earth.
He's just going to check it out. might be something to eat.
Whenever life gets you down, Mrs. Brown, and things seem hard or tough, and people are stupid, obnoxious or daft, and you feel that you've had quite enough, just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving, revolving at 900 miles an hour, that's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned, a sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour of the galaxy we call the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And our galaxy is only one of millions of billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz, as fast as it can go, at the speed of light, 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember, when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth, and pray that there's intelligent life somewhere up in space, 'cause there's bugger all down here on Earth. Whenever life gets you down, Mrs. Brown, and things seem hard or tough,